Breakups are rarely simple, but when it happens to a couple the world assumed was built to last, think Nicole and Keith, the shock lands harder. After his split from Nicole Kidman, yes, they've just been separated, Keith Urban did something few expected. He spoke with unvarnished honesty, letting people see past the glossy photo ops of their marriage. What triggered this sudden filing of divorce? And who would willingly risk losing the Nicole Kidman? Let's walk through what feels like another explosive Hollywood end of an era. On September 30th of this year, actress Nicole Kidman filed for divorce and set off shockwaves among fans, and she had her own statement to make. But here's the twist. Long before paperwork surfaced, Keith had already been hinting at where things stood. When Keith admitted he had blown his marriage to Nicole Kidman, it wasn't a polished Hollywood press note, it was blunt and unguarded. For years, people held them up as proof that a movie megastar and a country headliner could actually make it work. Then, with a single line, he pulled back the curtain and admitted the thing no one thought he'd say. It fell apart. And most of the blame was on him. This didn't come completely out of nowhere. Look back and you'll spot the breadcrumbs. That 2024 AFI tribute where Keith choked up and thanked Nicole for rescuing him during his hardest seasons, it played as sweet at the time. Now, post-split, it lands differently, almost like he was acknowledging how much he'd leaned on her, and somewhere inside, knew it. What stunned people wasn't only what he said, but how he said it. No stylists, no attorneys, no spin, just Keith, sounding like a man who couldn't keep carrying the weight. "I blew it to smithereens," he confessed. Plain, messy, painfully human. No finger-pointing, no smoke and mirrors. For once, he wasn't hiding behind a chorus or a grin. He owned it. And the timing? That's what made it ache. By then, the divorce petition was already filed. Fans and blogs were buzzing about skipped red carpets, stiff interviews, even chatter about another woman. But Keith's confession sliced through the rumor mill. It didn't answer every whisper, but it did make one thing obvious. Nicole wasn't the only one shouldering the load. Reactions split fast. Some praised him for finally taking responsibility. Others rolled their eyes. Too late. Plenty of fans just felt heartbroken. If Keith and Nicole couldn't make it, what hope does any Hollywood couple have? For Nicole, it had to be bruising. Reports say she fought to keep the family intact, protecting the kids, standing by him through rehab and career dips. Hearing him say he blew it probably didn't surprise her, but it did make their reality official for the rest of us. In the end, Keith's confession wasn't only regret. It was the thing he'd likely been admitting to himself for a long time. Whether it was closure, a clean conscience, or simply a truth too heavy to keep inside, it opened the door to every other question people are still asking. Because sometimes the hardest part of a breakup isn't saying it's over, it's saying why. And in Keith's case, many can't help wondering whether that why points only to the marriage or also to someone else. Big celebrity split. Cue the rumor engine. In Keith and Nicole's case, the whispers came fast. Almost immediately, talk surfaced about a possible other woman. Was there actually someone else? Or was gossip doing what gossip does, filling silence with headlines? One name surfaced again and again, Maggie Baugh, Keith's 25-year-old guitarist. She'd been on tour with him, and fans began reading into little stage moments that felt interesting. At one show, Keith even swapped a lyric in The Fighter and used her name. Clips of him pointing in her direction on stage hit TikTok. And suddenly, the internet decided there was more than music between them. Of course, social media ran wild. Memes, blind items, insiders. Even a comment from Maggie's dad added a bit of fuel. Nothing conclusive, not exactly a denial. What could have been harmless stage banter now looked, at least to some, like something bigger. Here's the catch. No one has actually confirmed anything. Neither Keith nor Maggie has backed those rumors. And Nicole, silent. Which naturally just fans the flames. At the same time, the timeline didn't help. Nicole officially filed on September 30th, marking that date as the separation point after 19 years of marriage. She cited irreconcilable differences and ongoing marital issues. Insiders, though, suggested they'd been living separate lives well before paperwork. Supposedly, Keith had quietly established his own place, and to those in their orbit, the breakup felt kind of inevitable. Even so, the other woman's speculation is what cut deepest for many. Sources close to Nicole say she felt blindsided, especially after years of standing by him. And fans couldn't help connecting dots. His "I blew it" admission, the filing, the talk around Maggie, and the timing. Coincidence? Maybe. But it made his words feel heavier, like he was already carrying a truth the rest of us were only starting to piece together. Then again, only Keith knows. Here's the bigger lens. The other woman isn't always literally a person. Sometimes it's the road. Sometimes it's fame. Sometimes it's old demons that never fully disappear. In Keith's world, a punishing tour calendar, spotlight demands, and long documented struggles with addiction could all play that role. Literal or symbolic, the whispers cracked open the polished image of a couple many thought had it all, which leads to the next question. If the foundation was shaking, when did the first cracks appear? Say, power couple, and certain pairings jump to mind, and for nearly 20 years, Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman were near the top. Glamorous actress? Check. Country superstar? Check. Hand-holding on carpets and easy kisses for the cameras? Double check. They weren't just married, they were a brand. Proof, people said, that real love can survive the circus. But with power couples, what shines in public doesn't always match life at home. With Keith and Nicole, those fissures didn't explode overnight. They crept in like hairline fractures in glass. Hard to spot at first. Impossible to ignore later. Schedules were the culprit more often than not. Keith lived on the road, city to city, stage to stage. Nicole's work meant far-flung film sets, press tours, and commitments that kept her moving. Add 2 daughters to the mix, and the perfect setup looked more like 2 calendars in constant conflict. How do you build a cozy daily life when both of you are always somewhere else? They tried. There were reunions, big gestures, those red carpet smiles that kept fans reassured. But insiders now admit those were quick fixes, band-aids on bigger problems. The real gulf wasn't just miles, it was emotional. Fans noticed too. A solo appearance here, a separate event there. Interviews that once felt warm turned clipped. At first, people shrugged. Everyone has off days. In hindsight, the signs were visible. Then came the quiet. And silence can drown out any statement. Fewer mentions of each other, fewer inside jokes. Just a noticeable gap. So when Keith finally said he had blown the marriage, it didn't feel like a twist ending. It felt like a curtain lift. Not a rumor, not a blind item. His own words confirming what many had begun to suspect. This wasn't unbreakable anymore. Rumors about someone else only sharpened the sting. Whether true or not, the timing hurt. For Nicole, friends say it felt like betrayal layered over grief. Here's the irony. The very things that made them a powerhouse, his music machine and her A-list career, were also the forces tugging them apart. For years, they juggled beautifully. Eventually, though, the scale tipped. He was pulled one way. She was pulled another. The marriage stretched thinner and thinner. The hardest part? Looking back, it feels almost inevitable. Friends reportedly saw it coming. Keith moving into his own place was the quiet confirmation that this wasn't a phase. By the time the filing landed, insiders weren't shocked. Only fans were still holding the fairy tale, and that's why it hurts to watch them fall. To us, it wasn't just a celebrity split. It was a reminder that even the couples we hold up as proof can still be human. If they couldn't, who can? Still, before the heartbreak, there was a spark the world rooted for. Before the headlines and the confession, there was a beginning that really was charming. Picture 2005, an event in Los Angeles celebrating Australians. Nicole Kidman, freshly single and rebuilding after Tom Cruise. Keith Urban, country star, easy smile, guitar in hand. They meet. Sparks. Here's the funny detail. Nicole has said she felt drawn to him right away. Keith, he waited 3 months to call. He literally sat on Nicole Kidman's number because he was shy. Imagine having that number and not dialing. When he finally did, conversations ran deep, hours at a time. By the time they went public, people sensed this wasn't a fling. Fast forward to June 2006, wedding in Sydney. Nicole in Balenciaga. Keith singing to her. It felt storybook, and it wasn't just the ceremony. They seemed genuinely connected. Nicole said Keith made her feel rooted and safe. Keith called Nicole his savior, crediting her for helping him through the darkest stretches, including addiction. That's not just romance. That's ride or die. For years, they were the couple everyone pointed to. Keith wrote songs fans were sure were for her. 2 daughters, Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret, turned their house into a home. They often described family life as their calm in the storm, which is exactly why today feels so jarring. When a love story gets built to fairy tale scale, any ending, if it comes, hurts more. So let's pause on the middle years, the daily reality, the wins, the where, everything that set the stage for what followed. If anyone understands love under a spotlight, It's Nicole Kidman. Before Keith, she'd lived the most public romance of the 90s with Tom Cruise, the adoption of Isabella and Connor, and a divorce that dominated headlines. By the time Keith arrived, she wasn't naive. She was a survivor looking for something steady. And at first, they seemed to crack the code. Nicole lit up talking about him, her rock, her anchor. He wrote love-soaked songs that sounded like letters to her. It felt like they'd found a way to blend genuine affection with A-list polish. Nicole has always been open about wanting stability. A simple family life wrapped around a demanding career. When their 2 girls arrived, it looked like she finally had the balance. Love, family, work. But marriage under Klieg lights takes logistics. And brutal ones. Acting isn't 9 to 5. One week she's in Australia, then Europe for press, then back stateside for a new shoot. Keith's tours were equally relentless. It was 2 people in parallel lanes touching hands where they could. People close to Nicole say she tried hard, bringing kids to sets, reshuffling press days, carving out windows for together time. But no matter how much she stretched, the gap didn't close. And the public pressure? Heavy. Every solo photo, every missed event, every clipped quote turned into speculation. Fans wanted the dream to stay intact. Behind the scenes, that balance got harder. For Nicole, the unraveling wasn't just losing a husband. It was losing the dream she thought she'd finally secured. Reports say Keith's "I blew it" comments stung, particularly with talk of someone else swirling. Even without an actual affair, it felt like betrayal. After years of fighting for a stable home, the ground gave way. Still, if Nicole is anything, she's resilient. She's been through heartbreak before. Those close to her say this one cut deep, but it won't define her. Before Keith, Nicole Kidman had already lived a lifetime of reinvention. She met Tom Cruise in 1989 on Days of Thunder and became half of the 90s most famous couple. They adopted Isabella and Connor. By 2001, it was over, publicly and painfully. At 33, she had to rebuild her life and identity. Professionally, she soared. The early 2000s were transformative. She won the Oscar for The Hours, 2002. Moulin Rouge, The Others, Cold Mountain. She became an artist known for risk and range, but she often hinted at loneliness. She wanted a family she could center. When Keith arrived, it felt like the grounded love she'd been missing. That's why fans invested so deeply. It wasn't just a star pairing. It was Nicole, battle-tested, finally landing someplace safe, which is what makes this ending cut sharper. She's done this before. She built a beautiful life afterward. But people can't help wondering, how many times can you start over? Part of what made them magnetic was that their romance ran alongside 2 skyrocketing careers. Nicole, Hollywood royalty. Keith, Nashville's golden boy. Together, they were the crossover dream. Nicole had already proved she was one of the greats. Oscar in hand, fearless in her choices. Keith's path was its own grind, Nashville battles, then breakout hits like Somebody Like You and You'll Think of Me. By 2005, he was selling out arenas. Put them together, and you got fireworks. But fame is a double-edged blade. It hands you the life you want, and a schedule that makes normalcy a fantasy. Keith's road life, Nicole's global filming. Individually, impressive. Together, exhausting. Insiders have said it often felt like parallel lives, immersed in each other, yet constantly pulled apart by work. Grand gestures bridged the gaps. Mid-tour reunions, surprise set visits, cross-continental flights. Lovely? Yes. Sustainable? Not really. And the spotlight magnified everything. Missed events, solo carpets, awkward sound bites. Fans expected perfection because, for so long, they delivered it. But the higher their stars rose, the more delicate the balance became. In truth, their careers weren't just context, they were a third character in the marriage, sometimes drawing them close, sometimes driving them apart. Always present. The divorce papers may be filed, but the story doesn't end. It changes chapters. For Nicole, the focus is clear. Her daughters. Friends say she dreaded the moment their separation went public. Now that it's out, she's strangely calm. Surprisingly level-headed, one insider said. Her energy is going to Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret, to the future, not the post-mortem. Film work will continue. Home will be the center. Stability is the mission. Keith's next chapter comes with a unique wrinkle. The prenup. Back in 2006, they signed a marriage agreement with one unusual clause. Reports suggest Keith would be entitled to $600,000 for every year he remained sober. Given his struggles with addiction, it was part safeguard, part sign of Nicole's support. And here's the kicker. He's reportedly been sober ever since entering rehab just months after their wedding. Do the math, and that's around $11 million. Beyond the number, it shows their marriage was built on both love and accountability. Early on, Nicole staged an intervention, something Keith has said saved his life and career. Everything was just designed, I believe, for that moment to fuse us together, he told Oprah in 2010. So where does that leave him now? In some ways, with a clean slate. Financially sound, still a headliner, and if history is any guide, he'll funnel the turbulence into the work. Some of his best songs were born from raw, personal truth. Fans are already wondering how the breakup will shape the next record. As for co-parenting, both have always protected their daughter's privacy, so don't expect public drama. Insiders say they're committed to keeping things smooth for the kids. Whatever didn't work between them, they've always been a united front as parents. There's a bittersweet symmetry here. Their marriage began with an intervention and ends with a clause about sobriety. Between those bookends were nearly 2 decades of love, family, and hard-earned steadiness. The finale isn't what fans hoped for, but both Nicole and Keith are stepping forward, with grace, grit, and, yes, a little tabloid noise. Because even the perfect couple is still just 2 people figuring life out, and now learning to do it separately. In the end, Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman's story reminds us that even the most glamorous couples face familiar struggles: love, distance, and the strain of keeping it together. Their paths have diverged, but the fascination won't fade. If you want more deep dives into the real stories behind the headlines, hit subscribe and stick around. There's more to come.